Come to me. Come to me. Shh, it's the Film Flamers.
Hey guys, I'm Chris.
Hey everybody, I'm Robert,
And we're the Film Flamers.
bringing you a special end-of-year surprise, a post-Christmas present.
That's right. And we're here to introduce you to...
Tangina.
We have a new mixer. We got it as a gift for the pod.
Really, it's a gift for all y'all.
Really. This is actually a surprise episode because, we weren't actually planning. We thought maybe we could give you guys like a late Christmas gift of a hot take. And guess what? We somehow managed to do it.
We did it. We did the thing. And it has been a hot minute since we've had a hot take episode. So
That's right. And I thought within like 6 days of the end of the year, this is going to be like the last horror movie, or at least the last big one, right? Might be the last horror movie. Pretty close.
Yeah.
Of the year. And so why not do a hot take on that? It's one of the most highly anticipated.
Right.
It's a highly anticipated IP, meaning intellectual property, with Nosferatu. And obviously we've been waiting for, Robert Eggers to kind of return to straight up horror.
yes, since he really hasn't done straight-up horror since his very first feature film, right?
Right. You could say that, he's done a little bit more, dipped his toes into folk horror a little bit more with Lighthouse,
Yeah.
maybe even a little bit with The Northman in ways, that's the original Hamlet story, but there's like some horrific parts to it, but straightforward horror, I would say. Yeah.
Right. And since we talked about this news item on Shooting the Flames, we sort of like followed the production and release schedule for Nosferatu. We talked about the trailer on Shooting the Flames, and here we are to give our hot take as we literally just left the theater.
That's right. Although Alex, friend of the pod, goes to Overlook with us generally, was in town for a visit, and we were going to go to Six Flags Over Texas. It was a little cold, so we ended up going to a haunted house, which was open for a special Christmas thing, and so we did the VIP experience for that. And on our way out, we ran into a guy from Focus Features, and he ended up giving us tickets to go see Nosferatu, along with like really high quality beanies and some posters, essentially on my birthday, which was be like a week later than that. And I was like, holy shit, like randomly met this guy. And so I was able to go. Sadly, you were not able to go.
I was not.
But my husband, Matt, went with me on my birthday, and we got in. We got to see Nosferatu a week early. And so I have been, champing at the monograin to go see this with you again, or get your hot take on it if you were able to go see it. And guess what? We were able to go see it today together.
That's right. Well, and quite frankly, I've been trying to see it for the last 3 days. Like I knew, like Christmas Day, I looked at like the seats that were available, and I was like, no, you know. And then Friday of this week, it was the same thing. Like the seats were being taken, this movie's being watched, people are buying tickets to this movie, and I was finally today said, you know what, fuck it, I'll just get whatever seat they have, and let's go watch the thing, because I needed to. And,
and like we said, it's like one of the last horror movies.
That's right.
Of the year. It's one of our most anticipated. So let's talk about the thing.
That's right. I don't even know really where to begin with this one. Like we left the theater just now, and I was like, okay, I need to like think for a minute. I need to figure out where to put my emotions, because I kind of both really like and really dislike this movie. Like,
yeah, it's a little bipolar.
Yeah. And like, I have heard people all over the place say that Nosferatu is going to be very, very polarizing, but I didn't expect for Nosferatu to be polarizing within myself, within my person, right?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of subjectivity out there. There's a lot of discussion. Like the first half is boring. I love the second half. It's so understandable and accessible. And for me, for my part, I really loved the first half. right? And or even parts of the first half, and then like the second half kind of gets way more mainstream. But we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. Maybe we should cover the things that we liked the most first.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that's a good way to start.
Yeah, the vibe, the atmosphere is pretty top tier. I love the cinematography. There are some peak cinematography moments. Everything to me in like Transylvania is great. There's like a gypsy bar scene where the cinematography is just absolutely like The Witch beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like snowy, pathways that are very just like straight up old European fairy tale, and then just masterful editing and pacing with and look of him getting to the castle in almost this dreamlike way, and then the slow reveal of essentially Nosferatu or Count Orlok, I guess, is some of my favorite parts and some of my favorite kind of Jonathan Harker kind of moments in all of film, I would say.
Yeah. Because
Keanu is a little not right for that role, but still like in Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is my other favorite adaptation of the story, essentially, because Nosferatu, of course, as we have covered many times and extensively in the past, is, of course, an adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, right?
That's right. Because we have just talked about Nosferatu just a couple months ago, actually, the original silent film. And, honestly, I was kind of hoping for like a one-up on that,
Yeah.
And my thoughts about the things that I like really mirror yours. I feel like the opening parts of this movie are so well paced and so well directed, and they just look really, really good.
Yeah.
And I love it. It's very Eggers. And
right. And that's what we wanted. That's what we were so excited about, because The Witch is such a specific, unapologetic, not super accessible, just take on, New England folklore. Right. And The Witch and folk horror, just peak folk horror. And we're like, I want a Nosferatu or even a Dracula that fits into that universe, that universe with the tone that Eggers was able to set, and like the real world lighting and just how scary the natural world can be, and he kind of succeeds in that a little bit here, but kind of drops the ball for whatever reason.
And I think that's because, like you said, it's kind of folk horror at the beginning of this movie. Like everything is set outside of Western Europe for that first part, right? Or at least the really interesting parts of the first half of this movie are. Yeah. And that's what Robert Eggers really does well, right? As we've seen in The Witch, is that he can take some things that are sort of far removed from what we would call society, right? Or civilized society, and make it very, very interesting and very neat to look at and kind of immersive. And he does that really well in this movie. Like when Nicholas Holt's character first arrives at that gypsy village, right?
Everything in the gypsy village, including the dream-ish sequence he has later that leads into the dream sequence of him getting to the castle, which is all, of course, reality, but he's experiencing it as though it was a dream.
That's right. And because he doesn't really know what's going on, like he is like a stranger in a strange land, and he's witnessing these customs, and he is like unexpectedly, like very quickly going on this trip, and has left his new wife for all of this, and he's experiencing something that he just doesn't know. And I think that that's the case for a lot of people when you get to a strange place like that, and you're kind of immersed in a society or customs that you don't understand. It's all going to feel very dreamlike for any of us.
Yeah, but I mean, like it's literally edited and everything, and like the kind of hazy and everything kind of surrealist in a way, to where even the audience feels like, it's like, oh, this is like, we're literally like floating through this. And for him, like entering the carriage, he literally is kind of floating onto the carriage, like visually. And so like, I really love that sort of surrealistic filmmaking that he does there for that part of it. And it really like, I don't know, it goes into the mystery of Nosferatu and like the power that he holds, the supernatural, subtle supernatural power that he holds for miles around himself, and later we see that going on in Visburg too. You see it in the trailer with the shadow of his hand going over, in a very, Francis Ford Coppola, Dracula sort of way. The shadows are straight up Francis Ford Coppola all over this movie.
Yeah. Well, even
which
when
is great.
Even when they're trying to be like, or no, it's still a little Coppola-esque. But
yeah, and a little Werner Herzog thrown in for good measure.
Yeah, no, you're right the first time. Isabella Johnny. So I don't know, but those are the things that I really liked about this movie. I liked it when this movie was very Eggers.
Yes.
And I can especially appreciate the surrealist qualities, right? Because we go from talking about German expressionism and the way that movie was made, the original, and we move into this more like surrealist folk thing that Eggers is kind of like known for, right? I think in all of his movies, and honestly, y'all, I've never seen The Northman, so
I have though. So.
I don't know how surrealist it may feel, but
Sure, yeah.
The Lighthouse is certainly surrealist. And The Witch has a lot of moments, and there are a lot of moments in this movie that really reminded me of The Witch, especially like when he was in Eastern Europe, right? There's this whole like sign the devil's book moment. And I'm like, this feels very Eggers to me. And I appreciate that. And then some other things that I liked about this movie, at least like as a whole, is like some of the acting and characters I thought were really good. I think that Lily-Rose Depp-Ricci is like... I think that she does some really good moments in this movie. I think she has some like really serviceable moments in this movie. I think it's kind of all over the place, but the role itself and the character itself is kind of flashy in a way that I kind of wasn't expecting, because that's not what happens in the original.
No, and it's thematically it's almost a rehash of The Witch, right? Which is just it's about, instead of like the East invading the West and like the fear of the unknown and the fear of like the land of thieves and phantoms or whatever the fuck, right?
Yeah.
This one is much more along the lines of The Witch, which is about women's repression, right? Mm-hmm. And the patriarchy and blah, 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 right? And so it's kind of like a rehash of that, but it's less important somehow. In The Witch, the power and the agency was kind of out of her hands, even if she had wanted to take it, which is kind of the point. Versus in this, is the whole thing is kind of caused by the repression, right? Where she literally like wakes up Nosferatu from his centuries-old sleep in the earth, because she kind of psychically reached out. She's apparently, she in another life, she could be a priestess of Isis. And if this is starting to kind of sound familiar to you, it's because you watched Penny Dreadful. Yeah. And that's Eva Green. Eva Green's character was essentially a psychic, like a supernatural, like, reincarnation, or a witch, the mother of evil, whatever the fuck you're going to say, although she's not evil. And both brothers, Satan and Dracula, apparently were brothers, and sought her, right? Sought for her, either tried to romance her or tried to like force her, but it had to kind of be her choice.
Right.
Right. And that was actually more clear in that show, versus here, he can drink the blood of whoever fuck he wants. He's a supernatural being, but for some reason he needs her to contract, like as if he was like Satan from The Witch or something. It almost just doesn't really make sense.
Right.
There's some pacing and structure issues, like when they go and hunt, for him at his, mansion in Visburg, aka London, really. They do the Hunter's Prelude music from Bram Stoker's, in a way, like their version of it, even though they just told the audience that they're there kind of as a ruse, because the whole plan is really, the private secret plan is to get, Mina's character, Lily-Rose Depp-Ricci's character to kill herself, sacrifice herself by, just like in the original adaptation, which is to get him to, suckle her until sunrise.
Did she die though? I remember the sunrise suckling, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Totes.
So it was a full sacrifice in that one too.
I believe so.
I feel like things were...
beauty killed the beast, Robert.
I feel like things were more clear in the silent film than they were in this.
A little bit. It doesn't really follow its own rules in this one. It almost explains too much mythology without actually giving us the history of one of the most important and interesting characters in the film, which is, of course, the title character
of Nosferatu,
which they basically ignore. He's basically just there as a symbol.
Well, and even like as a symbol, he's not even like, he's not menacing. He's not interesting in any kind of a way.
It's the mustache, the porn stash.
He does have a fucking porn stash. And like I've seen better use of porn stash in actual porn. And the thing is that like Chris and I were talking off mic, and I said like the most iconic thing about Nosferatu is Nosferatu himself, right? Just the way that he looks and the way that he acts. And like, that's the kind of thing like we talked about in the episode that's kind of ingrained in pop culture and ingrained in everyone's mind, whether you've seen the film or not.
Yeah.
You know what Nosferatu looks like. And I don't know why they had to go in a completely different direction for the look of that particular character.
Right.
So much so that it bothered me.
Yeah, and it's really the best book adaptation of the way Dracula is supposed to look in old age form.
That's true, but they weren't making Dracula.
No, they weren't, were they?
No, that's so weird how this movie is called Nosferatu and like the fucking title card looks exactly the same.
Yeah, and it's kind of a nitpick too, I don't know.
Is it though? I mean, like,
yeah,
come on.
You're right. They really he just should have called it vampire or something. He could have gotten away with both, really, telling his own story. I really kind of wish he had just gone off and told his own story and not called it Nosferatu or Dracula, just called it vampire or vampire or something. And we would have known, oh, this is kind of an amalgam between, Dracula and Nosferatu. And by the way, Nosferatu is mostly kind of like a made up word, right? It's not the original word for Nosferatu, or vampire or anything, right? It was made for that movie.
Because they didn't want to get sued.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is that like, I am all about like taking something and making it your own. I think that if you're going to do a remake of a movie, no matter how long the space of time is between them, like it's okay to go and do your own thing.
Well, like The Witch, right? And it was kind of a retelling, like through the lens of this nuclear family, kind of what was the culmination of all of the fears and everything else of witches in the wilderness and what could happen, and if your family was compromised and and all of that stuff. And it's just like, okay, well, do the same thing with vampirism. Just take all the folklore around vampirism, which there are plenty, and make your own story about it, centered on a town or a romance or, whatever. But like, I know that he was fantasizing about making his own Nosferatu movie for a while, but it didn't quite work because I really wanted more Eggers, and it's not enough Eggers. He had to kind of surrender to the adaptation, and he lost some of himself in that process.
No, I completely agree. I think that he was a slave to the process of this, right?
Yeah.
He was just like, okay, I'm remaking a film.
It has to start in the same place and end in the same place. What can I do in the middle to play with it? He stylizes, like we say, that first half, which we love, all of his stylizations for that. And then that second half, it kind of gets into soap opera territory. There's not much horror, like it needed certainly another couple of horror beats, at least one obvious one concerning a mausoleum.
Yeah. And not to spoil like way too much of this movie, but Chris is right. Like the last half of this film, he really goes to strike this like Regency literature tone, even though like the time period in which the film is set is not even close to like that time period.
No, it's supposed to be turn of the century, 1900, right?
But everything else in there feels like a Jane Austen novel, down to the way people are dressed and the way that people are talking. And I'm like, okay, like that's not right. It's anachronistic to the time period. And I think that he just gets way too caught up in that. I feel like he knew things that he wanted to do, but he didn't want to do them. Like he didn't want to be too original with his adaptation.
Why must you be exasperatingly contrarian, Robert?
I know. That's when I felt so
I
seen.
pray you.
She was just like, Christmas tide is upon us. And I was like, oh, Jesus. But like the things that he decided to change were the wrong things to change. Like the way that fucking Nosferatu looks. I'm like, you could have changed so much more. Now, I do find it a little interesting that, in the last half of this movie where everything is supposed to be a plague, or at least that's what the townsfolk are supposed to think about, right?
Yeah.
Like it does have this very like post-pandy quality to it where like no one is believing like the actuality of what's going on. No one will listen to the doctors about things, right? Who truly believe that there's a vampire there, and everyone's like, no, it's just a sickness. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
like,
what they were kind of alluded to is that all the rats, the plague rats in the town are kind of his little Renfields, right? Like he's vicariously feeding through these rats, and he said he is like making the world undone or whatever the fuck he says, right? Yeah. And, Regency speak.
I pray
even though
he's making the world undone.
He's like from 1,000 80, whatever, but whatever.
Yeah. I pray you, mother, please don't make us go to bed. Oh, no, you simply must go to bed.
He's from way before Regency, and the movie takes place way after Regency, so I don't know what the fuck's going on. But.
And yet I was waiting for Mr. Darcy to somehow come in as like a rat catcher. I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
and this cast, though, is amazing. I have to say, that's another thing I really love. The music's good. The cinematography's great. It's all of the stuff that went into this movie was great. It's just not as good as the sum of its parts, weirdly.
Willem Dafoe, I like every time I see him on film, I am just like astonished at how good of an actor he is.
Oh, yeah.
And
no one can monologue quite like he can.
Exactly. And like this role is no exception. Like if there needed to be some sort of funny beat or something, Willem Dafoe was there to provide it to you.
Although I still prefer Anthony Hopkins in the Van Helsing role.
Because this one was kind of goofy, but I feel like that's just the way that Willem Dafoe plays
I expected him to like turn to camera and be like, I'm something of a scientist myself. And I'm like,
but he's just like, I don't know. I mean, and he's the one voice of reason sometimes, especially when it comes to the care of Lily-Rose Depp-Ricci. And like, I mean, because the first doctor is just like, I demand that she sleep in her corset and you can just go ahead and tie her up if you need to because she's clearly crazy because she has too much blood. Far too much blood.
Yeah.
But like,
hand me that leech.
The acting was good. Characters are great. It looked really good. I think for me, my biggest problem and where I started to lose faith in this movie was how fucking bored I got toward the end of it.
Yeah, it needed a few more horror beats. There was like a body count of 2 in this whole fucking movie, at least on screen.
And I was just like, there were so many good things leading up to this. I mean, like even the character of Knock, right? Was Canuck, as they pronounced it in this, like Hair Canuck. I was just like, fuck, are they really fucking saying that? And like, even that character was so much better than in the original one. I was just like, all right, like he's got a clear vision. And then all of a sudden I was just like, is it over yet? Like,
yeah,
I really want to go. I had put my popcorn on the ground and I accidentally kicked it over 2 times. And I was far more concerned about picking up the popcorn than I was with watching the movie on the giant screen. So I was just like, nope, that's bad,
Yeah.
And it was quite an about face from how I felt when the movie first started.
I do wonder if we had not seen, Nosferatu so recently, if we weren't so familiar with all of its beats,
yeah,
if we would have enjoyed it more, if we hadn't been so familiar with Robert Eggers' whole vibe, if we wouldn't have been as disappointed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Also, I know all of the callbacks. I know where the mustache comes from. Like, I know all of this stuff. It's like I'm almost too in it. Like, I'm almost too much in the know to really enjoy this movie, And probably vicariously, so are many of our listeners.
And that could be the case because these are all valid concerns about like why someone would not like something. I don't think that being in it or being like an expert in something is a bad thing.
Yeah.
But
I'm going to interject here, gentlemen. Tangina here. I'm going to say you're giving me whiplash with all of your discussion. I'm going to need to hear some ratings, boys.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tangina.
Who knew that she would be returning? Okay, out of 5 stars, what did you give Nosferatu?
I gave it a 3.5. I ran it through Scans, my proprietary spreadsheet movie ratings calculator. And I don't even think it's going to break my top 10 for the year. I really enjoyed most of it, parts of it, but it just didn't land. This is an excellent year for horror. Excellent. In every conceivable way. And sorry, but like something that I really enjoy but isn't great isn't going to make that top 10 cut, but that's fine. That's okay. This is going to be a cult classic no matter what. It was always going to be. It's a Robert Eggers Nosferatu movie.
Yeah, so this kind of pains me to say. I also ran it through Scans and what Scans gave me, it could really go in one of 2 directions, right? And it really makes me sad because this is a good movie. It's a very, very well-made movie. But I have to give it 3.5 as well. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like when the movie first started, I was just like, oh, this is a 4-star for sure. It could get better. But no, I mean, like ultimately, I feel like some of its problems are far too big and doesn't save some of the artistic things that I liked about it. So,
Yeah.
but that's not to say that it's not a good film. It is a good film. And I think in any other year outside of 2024, it would have like maybe made a top 10 for me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm looking at this comparatively, and we'll probably get into this next month whenever we do our end of year episode, there's just way too many better things.
Yeah, this is going to be the thing that, you know, we would go back to and say, okay, this is one of the movies that we were most anticipating all year. And how did that end up? Like, what was the outcome versus expectation for the year? I think we always touch on that a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
And so this would be a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I would agree.
You know, and usually it's the things that we're looking forward to that we're most disappointed by. So we need to stop looking forward to things, Robert.
That's right. Expectations, we have to cut them out. Like right now, we should not be expecting anything to be good from now on.
Expectations are the beast.
Thanks, Georgina.
I think that just about wraps up our hot take on Nosferatu. As always, we would like to know if any of y'all have caught this movie over the last week or so since it's been out. Let us know on social media at The Film Flamers on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky.
You can email us at tiredqueens@filmflamers.com or call our hotline at 972-666-7733.
33.
Oh, you're all about our porn stash from Pennsylvania.
Come knock my porn stash right off
Canuck.
with your dick.
That's like a silent K.
As we just alluded to, we have a lot of content coming out for you in January. In the new year, we will be doing our traditional Up in Flames episode where we boot 2024 right out the door. But we have a lot of good things to say about the many, many great horror movies that came out this year.
Oh, man, I can't wait to talk about it.
Also, New Year, New You, we have some classic horror and some new horror to deep dive into.
Steel yourselves, because we're going to be talking about The Omen and the first one, too.
The First Omen.
That's right, Tangino. We'll be covering the First Omen. And the other one.
And the other one. And that original Omen.
But not the remake. No.
Oh, God, no. Well, maybe on Patreon.
As much as I like Julia Stiles.
We could do a little something. Maybe we leave it up to the patrons.
Yeah. That's a good
Maybe.
idea. Gregory, peck us a movie.
Pick one out. Well, everybody, enjoy this.
But not from David Warner Brothers. I'm sorry.
All right, you have to be stopped.
And Merry Holidays.
Merry holidays to you all. And until next year,
This podcast is clean.
we can have some
Sweet
dreams.
I said it was clean.
Clean dreams.
Now hold my tennis balls.
I'm going to jam your frequency.
Get those tennis balls out of your mouth.
Sorry.